Sonja Parker, but you can call me BP. Come on and bring the entire family and let's celebrate at the Low Country Juneteenth week. It's a whole week worth of activities and we're going to spend some time together too. And don't forget about that grand finale that's going on that Sunday, June 19th. On stage that day, Midnight Star, Dave Hollister, Fat Man Scoop, and you've got Shelton Richardson. And of course, the Star 99.7 family, we want to see you there. You can get your tickets by going on to JuneteenthWeekFestival.com. Come on through the Ritz Bar and Grill, 3557 Dorchester Road, and let's get you some tickets to the Low Country Juneteenth Week Festival.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to, I'm going to call it a special edition of the Intimate Conversations with Kenya. I am so excited and grateful to be a part of this year's Low Country Juneteenth Week to bring you a conversation with three women. Then we're going to talk tonight about what it means to lead as Black women. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring our speakers onto, or our panelists onto the call. So we have Miss Erica Bligen. Welcome, Erica.
Hey, everyone.
We have Miss Brittany Lee. Come on in, Brittany.
Hi.
And Miss Sonja Southerland. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So we are here tonight to talk and get real about what it is like to lead as Black women inside of the organizations that trust all of you, Erica, Brittany, and Sonja, to do what you do every day. And so, of course, I could read through your bios, but I think bios are so, scripted, and it's just better to tell your own story. And so I am going to ask you each to spend a little bit of time telling our audience a little bit more about you and what you do in your leadership role. So we're going to go in alphabetical order. So that means you're up first, Ms. Bligen.
I got it. Hey, everyone. Once again, I am Erica Bligen. I'm the Executive Director of Student Programs and Student Diversity for MUSC. I've been in higher ed for about 17 years, and specifically in this role, I lead the strategic vision for a group of higher ed professionals that are passionate about our students' welfare at MUSC. So we support all 6 colleges. We provide them with interprofessional education by way of leadership, service, diversity and inclusion, and community outreach. There are no 2 days that are the same, but as a core value to what we do, we make sure that we keep our students at heart in everything that we do. It's a pleasure to be here. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm also working on my PhD to one day become a provost of some institution.
Very nice, and you will do it. Thank you, Erica.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Miss Brittany, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everyone. My name is Brittany Lee. I am most recently the Director of People Operations for Further Technology, which is a startup tech company based in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm on my 3rd week in, so I'm going to speak a lot tonight just concerning my most previous role as a Corporate Director of Human Resources for a hospitality company, also in Charleston. And I've been in the HR space for about 8 years now. And the greatest thing I love about the current role that I'm in and the role that I was in previously is that I've had the unique and special opportunity to build the HR function from ground up for both of these companies. That is coming in with an HR strategy and aligning that with the business strategy, creating a special experience for employees on a day-to-day basis, putting recruitment processes in place to make sure we have equitable hiring experiences. Also, compensation, making sure we have market compensation and benefit packages for all our employees, and this training and learning and growing their careers in so many amazing ways. So it's been a pleasure, and I'm excited to talk to y'all today.
Thank you, Brittany. And Miss Southerland, Sonja.
Well, good evening, everyone, and it's such a pleasure to share in this conversation on tonight. I am the head of HR for a global medical device company called Belimed, which is headquartered here in Charleston, South Carolina, and Zug, Switzerland. I've been in this role for the last, 4.5 years, but my HR career has spanned the last 20 years. So in my current role, I'm responsible for leading the HR function for the U.S. organization, and that includes all things HR, from recruitment and retention, compensation and benefits, learning and development, strategic planning, employee relations, and even compliance. And so on a day-to-day basis, I am managing the organization, and my team are leading the different components of HR to support our employees who are in 38 different states here in the United States. And thankfully, I have the opportunity to sort of participate in a duality at this stage of my career. I'm also in the process of launching a full service HR consulting firm. And in that capacity, I get the opportunity to help small businesses establish the HR function for their organization and partner with them in ensuring that all of the HR practices are there and in place. And I also get to help career professionals who are early to mid-level just continue in their career journey and progress throughout their career journey. So I'm really excited about all the things that we'll discuss tonight and just the opportunity to share from the HR perspective.
Amazing. So what I know for sure is that this is going to be a great conversation, and we're going to learn a lot from our panelists tonight. And so what I want to start out by saying is, first of all, for all of you who are tuned in, thank you for being here. Share this. If you're watching us on Facebook, please share and invite more people into the conversation. I also want to tell you that this conversation is meant to be interactive. So absolutely, I have some questions that I'm going to ask these ladies to shed some light on what it's like to lead as Black women. But if there is anything that you want to ask this panel and want to know more about, I want you to put it in the comments. I will be watching the comments throughout our conversation, and I will bring you into the conversation by asking your question as long as time permits. So please, welcome. So why are we here before I jump into the question? So we're here, we were invited to this conversation or to participate in Low Country Juneteenth week because of the community that I've created, the Power Tribe. And so the Power Tribe is a community that was designed with women of color in mind as a place where women of color professionals, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are in nonprofit or for-profit, can come to be nurtured and developed and continue to grow in your position of leadership and influence. And so when I was approached about having this conversation to go a little bit deeper into what the Power Tribe brings, I could not think of a better way to do it than to bring some of our Power Tribe members forth. And you already see by their intros that they are dynamic women who are out here doing their own thing and changing organizations, and organizations are better because they are there. So I'm very excited to just kind of jump in. We're going to talk about what it's like to lead as a Black woman, from everything from owning your position of power and influence, because sometimes we get into these roles and it's not always easy to maintain that position of power when you start to get into some of the roughest points in your day-to-day work. And then how you leverage that to really be an example for the organizations that you are working in, but also the people who look up to you. So we're just going to jump right in. Again, I want to invite you at any moment, drop a comment or question. I will be watching, and we look forward to having this conversation tonight. So I'm going to start off with you, Erica. So this one's for you. So as a leader in your organization, how important is it to you that you lead by example for other African Americans in the organization? And do you consider that pressure or privilege?
Interesting. Good question. So as a leader at MUSC, I find pride, and one of my core values is leading by example. Leading by example because I know that there's others that are looking up to me. I hold that value near and dear to my heart. It's not just about strength and preservation and just kind of persisting, but it's really consistently showing up as myself, authentically showing up as myself for the good of those that are around me. I view it as both a privilege and pressure. Why? Because I know that there are many that are watching my footsteps that have not been privy to be in spaces that I've been invited in. I know that out of the 25,000 employees that are at MUSC Regional Health System, there are not many that look like me. So one, that's privilege, and I'm very humbled by that. So when I think about the trajectory of those that are around me and those that might glean from my leadership, I make it a point to really walk the walk and that I'm talking. So Yeah, both privilege and pleasure. Pressure, not pleasure, pressure, but certainly something that I hold near and dear to my heart with being an example.
Thank you for that. And you said a couple of things that I want to just lean into. And although I asked this question of Erica, I invite both Sonja and Brittany to also share your own perspectives, because it is the balance of the privilege and the pressure, right? But you talked specifically about leading by example as being your core value. And one of the things that all leaders should be very clear on is, what are your core values, right? Because it's your core values that's really going to carry you through every day, but especially through those difficult moments. And so you said one of your core values is lead by example. Do you have another that you would share as a leader? And then I'll just kind of open that up to both Brittany and Sonja as well. What are some of your core values as a leader?
I would say being consistent in my day-to-day practices. I think consistency is key. Building relationships is another one that I really value. And I feel like that's been probably the most integral thing that has really helped me to flourish in my leadership responsibilities, is the ability to connect and build those types of relationships that are meaningful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sonja or Brittany?
So I would say probably earlier on in my career, I probably would have used the word authenticity, although I didn't feel, comfortable enough in really showing and bringing my full self to work everywhere I went. I still tried to show up in a space that felt real and secure for me. Now, I think more than authenticity is harmony, that I find that place of balance within myself and what I'm comfortable in representing to my organization, and, and what parts of myself I'm willing to show up in, the times that it's necessary. But more importantly, I think, to piggyback on what Erica said, is for me, it's collaboration, because I realize that by the time you reach levels that I have reached in my career, and probably a lot of you others, that you can't do it by yourself. You need relationships, you need allies, you need people, and you need to know where they are. And so I use that as a real strength and a opportunity for me every day to really find out where the people are that I need to collaborate with, even within my team. Even though I'm leading them and they're responsible for reporting to me, I'm not making decisions absent of those relationships, because I need to produce results through them and the organization. So collaboration is really, really important for me.
I have a question for you, Sonja, because what you did not say that I know about you is that you report directly, like you're the head of HR. So your boss is the CEO of the company. And so when you talk about the value of relationships and collaboration, like how does that show up for you when you're reporting to the highest ranking person in the company?
Going back to what Erica said, is privilege and pressure, because it's nice to be able to sit at the tables with the decision makers and be a part of that process of making the decisions that are impacting the organizations. But the pressure is, you're at that table making the decisions and a part of the process that is impacting the lives of people. So although it's a privilege, and I'm really excited that I have the opportunity to share, and I get access into spaces and places that are not often seen, especially for someone who looks like me, I still am conscious every day that when I'm sitting at those tables and when decisions are being made, that there's a whole lineage behind me that I have to be conscious of, and make sure that I am positioning myself and I'm in the right headspace to make decisions that are going to impact and that will benefit those people that are not as privileged to be in the space that I am in. And so sometimes that's difficult. I have to say the hard things, and I have to, put myself out there for the sake of others, even if the decision is not going to impact me directly. I know how it may impact someone else who's not yet at a position of power that I am in. So it's a great responsibility, and it's wonderful, but it can also be daunting.
Yeah, that's so good. And when I wrote down, say the hard things, because sometimes as a leader, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to say the hard thing, even though it may not directly impact you, it may impact others. And that's where the core values come in. And I just want to, before we move on to another question, I just want to land that plane for everyone who's listening and watching is that's why it's so important, whether you're a Black woman leading or whatever. If you're a leader, having core values is important, because your core values will help you in those moments that you have to say the hard things, right? So, Brittany, let's go. Let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
So, career growth. You talked a little bit earlier in your introduction about you're 3 weeks into a new role. You were previously in another role. You've been in the HR function about 8 years. And so there's definitely been some career growth for you. So, for all of those who may be listening and thinking about, how do I chart my career to get to the spaces and the places and the positions to lead like you, Brittany, what would you tell them are, let's say, the 3 things that you do to nurture your own career growth? And what advice do you have?
Yeah, so the first thing is just staying in the know about your particular industry. So what are those trends? How are things changing? What do you need to know? Because our knowledge can get outdated very quickly. So from our master's degree or our BA, right? So joining those national organizations is a big help. I'm an HR professional, so SHRM is really important to us. To be a national member, to be a local member, participating in those network events, going to those conferences, everything, because you're getting a download of information all the time. And that's going to help you to identify what within that industry aligns with you. HR is such a huge realm. And, myself and Sonja, we dabble in a little bit of everything, but HR could also be very specialized if you want it to be. So just really getting an understanding and knowing what's going on in your industry will help you align how you want your career to go. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing would be, plug for the Power Tribe right now, is establishing and gaining a mentor. I want to shout out Sonja right now because she is my mentor in this HR space and within the Power Tribe. But mentorship is so important because it helps you align yourself with someone who has already navigated the waters that you're navigating. They're able to steer you through troubled times. They're able to help listen, and you can download to them. They're going to impart some knowledge and give you questions to see through yourself and figure out who you are within your career space. They may help you ask questions that you never even thought to ask. They may help you when it comes to negotiating your next big contract or your next big deal. Or, for the biggest thing for me is, again, helping you align to what you actually is core to you and what you want to do with your life and with your career. And then the third thing is something that I recently learned, which is advocate for yourself and ask for what you want. Right. So, personally, I've always been a little bit hesitant to do that. Your fear of rejection, they're going to look at me like I have 5 eyeballs because I'm asking them for more money or asking them for changes in the scope of my work, but if you don't advocate for yourself, no one else will. So once you understand what direction you want your career to go in, what type of sphere of influence you want, what type of work you want to do on a day-to-day basis, what really brings you joy. Once you know those things, ask for it. And there's only going to be 2 things that are going to happen. They're either going to say yes, and you're going to be super excited and run with it, or they're going to say no. But that no may still be a yes, because that's going to be a yes to, it's time for me to move on and do something else that actually aligns to the core of who I am. So I would say those 3 things are a good way to help navigate your career.
Boy, you said so much. Well done. Well stated. So many nuggets there. I know your mentor sitting over there proud, like, that was very good.
Got you.
That's amazing. I just want to put a plug in. I know we have people out there watching. Please, if you have any questions about anything that has been said, please post it. I am still watching, waiting on our first question. What I always get asked, because you said one of the things was about finding a mentor, Brittany, and this question is for anybody. I always get asked, how do you find a mentor? And so if there's any insight that you all would like to offer to the audience about some tips of how to find a mentor, what would you say?
Well, my first response would be, because I went through this process several years ago, and when I first knew that I needed a mentor, I didn't know what I needed a mentor for. So I would suggest that you spend some time really thinking through and writing down, what are you looking to accomplish with a mentor relationship? Is it that you need a place to vent? Is it that you need some direction about a difficult situation that you're facing? Is it that, you know, you're ready to move to the next level and you need to kind of level up in some skills? You really need to get clear about what it is that you need, because that'll help you identify where you see that in someone else. And for me, my mentor is Kenya Dunn, who's on this call. And so I started this journey kind of asking and reaching out to several different people, and nothing really connected for me. I mean, I had, you know, a conversation here or there. It's like, yeah, I need a mentor. Will you be my mentor? And the answer was always yes, but there was no benefit to me, because it wasn't their fault. It was my fault, because I had not really clearly identified what it was I was looking for, so that I know what it was when I got there. And so for me, that was the biggest thing in identifying, is just knowing exactly what I needed in a mentoring relationship.
The one thing that I'll add to what Sonja said, and I totally agree, is that you have to find a mentor that is going to align with your values, that's aligning with what your true beliefs are, but then also knowing that it's okay to have more than one mentor for different things. So, you know, if Kenya's our mentor and she's taking us on this path, I might need something for something else. I have 2 children. I might need this bomb mom that knows how to navigate being a parent and a professional. So it's okay to have multiple mentors for certain things, and be able to pour into that mentor when they need a little oomph as well.
Yeah, mentor relationships should be super reciprocal. I think that is a fallacy that is sometimes prevalent, is thinking that it's a one way. And really, a mentor-mentee relationship is very reciprocal. Although you get a mentor for the purposes of helping you, we all bring value to the table, and we should bring value to our mentors, just like our mentors are bringing to us. Thank you so much. So the other thing I wanted to get into a little bit is this idea of advocating for yourself. And we're going to go back to your roles as leaders in just a moment. But you guys know in the Power Tribe, what we believe is that the life you're trying to create, or the career you're trying to accomplish, will never exceed the person you're willing to grow into. And so this conversation is good around find your mentor and how to advocate for yourself. So advocating for yourself is difficult, right? No matter how experienced you are, you will get the rumblings in the stomach when it's time to have the conversation. It happens to the best of us. And so would either of you like to give a little bit more insight? Brittany did an amazing job talking about her experience with learning to advocate for herself. What else can you all share, especially on your career climb to being in the role that you're in today? What did you learn? What would you like to share?
One thing that I've learned is to tell my story and to tell it often. And, you know, I think that a lot of times we just play ourselves so low. Like, you know, you just know what you're doing. You just do it and you just work hard. You know, I grew up, you know, with parents that said, you know, you work hard, you keep your head down, you go to work. You should. But then, you know, when you grow up and you're learning and you're in these different places, like, you know, I have a voice and my voice matters. And this is why you should listen to me. So I think it's important for our employers, employees, all of those that have stakeholders within what we do. I think it's important for them to know your value and to understand the worth that you bring to them, that you're bringing to the organization. And it's not, you know, I used to look at it as, oh, I don't want to toot my own horn. And it's not that. There's a way to do it humbly and professionally, for them to know, you know, that, you know, I do add value to this. This is why, you know, our students are retaining and so forth. So I think it's important, you know, you balance that with self-care, but just kind of building your own personal persona up, you know, just, you know, when you're having those days, they can't see that because we're just so used to kind of masking and doing our thing. But I think it's really important for them to understand your value and your worth in their organization or your own.
Yeah. That whole idea of telling your own story is so often mistaken as I like to call it bragging. And so I actually have a training that I call bragging rights. You've earned the right to brag. And so why not brag? And so one of the things my mom would always say is the good thing about people can't read your mind is people can't read your mind. The bad thing about people can't read your mind is people can't read your mind. So if you're not speaking up for yourself, then you cannot hold another person responsible for not really understanding or even perhaps understating your value. And so I always tell people, like, yeah, as often as you can, remind people what you've done and do it in a celebratory, positive way. It's not an in your face type of way, but you're celebrating yourself. If you want others to celebrate you, lead by example, celebrate yourself. All right. Yes, go ahead, Sonja.
I was going to say, I would add to that is take your time. I recall, kind of my escalation, my career path took off pretty quickly. And I recall in a previous role where I got this title that I really, really wanted. I was really excited about it. And they made me the offer and I said, yes. And whatever they offered me, I took it right then. And I didn't think about it. I didn't negotiate. I didn't think about any of the things that I was going to need, later down the road. And then I get into this role. Of course, I'm in the HR function. So I can see what everybody's making. I can see what everyone has negotiated. I can see all of these different packages that have been made available to others. And I started to feel salty. And I'm like, but you really can't, because I was just too eager to say yes, because I was excited to, get into this place and get into this space that I did not negotiate. And I will never, and I have never made that mistake again. So if someone makes me an offer, even if it is for, a consulting agreement or something, I take my time. I never respond. I never sign an agreement on the same day. I take my time. I look through it. I walk away from it, come back to it, look at it, and really consider what is it I'm going to need? What are my goals? What are my financial goals? What do I want to accomplish within the next 6 months to a year? And how is what this bringing to me going to help me meet that? And so sometimes you don't even think about, hey, I actually need an extra 2 weeks of vacation because this is what I want to do in the next year. So, you need to think about those things and add those things into slow down that process a little bit before you say yes, even if you're excited.
Yeah, so good. So good.
And just wanted to, yeah, that was good. Wanted to just go back on the bragging on yourself. I think for me too, I would kind of to Erica's point, you just work really hard and just put your head down. You forget all the good things that you do, right? So it's like, how can I brag on myself if I don't even remember all the things that I've accomplished? Sometimes you just feel super defeated because you just don't feel like you've made an impact, or you just can't recall it off the top of your head. So just recording those, like, every time you have a small win or big win, whatever type of win it is, write it down. I have a journal now where I write down things that I accomplished. And like those days where I do feel low or I don't feel valued, I go back to that and I say, Brittany, yes, girl, like you've been doing amazing. You've been killing it. Don't forget all the things that you've done. So just have that, to aside for yourself when you're ready to brag, when you're ready to go to that negotiation table to be able to advocate for yourself. You have that proof, you have that backup to say, this is what I've done, and help remind them for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we've talked about some developmental things, but I want to get a little bit more. We're about the halfway point into our conversation. Plug again, ask us some questions. Let us hear from you out there in YouTube and Facebook world. But I want to shift gears just a little bit about the experience of leading as Black women. And so, I don't know, was it last year we read the memo, right? You guys remember we read that in the Power Tribe, and boy, it was like the Bible for Black women. As we were all reading it, we were kind of like, and yeah, and yes, and yes, right? By Minda Harts. And so we do face challenges as Black women when we are in leadership roles. We, everything from the narratives, right? And I want to talk a little bit about the narratives that we face as Black women, and kind of what's been your experience and what are your recommendations? Because the thing about leading, you stay in it long enough, you learn sometimes the hard way, most of the time through mentors helping you navigate, but sometimes the hard way. But there are so many lessons that we, the three of you, can teach those that are listening about how to navigate those spaces and how to deal with those differently. So my question we'll start out with you, Sonja, is What have been some of the biggest challenges that you faced as an African American woman leader, and how did you handle when the times were going tough? And I'd love to actually hear from all three of you in this conversation.
So it's a really good question, and we've highlighted some of those things just throughout the conversation already. But I will say one of the greatest challenges for me, and probably you guys can identify with, is being the first, the only, or the few. So, I am in this global organization that's primarily European men, and I'm definitely the only woman of color. There's a couple other women on the executive team, and so we're making some headway in terms of women in leadership, but not necessarily Black women in leadership. So I think a unique challenge that we face is that because we are so isolated in these spaces, or we have not necessarily, it's not that people are trying intentionally to keep us out, we just have not had the access into some of these spaces, that our counterparts don't know or understand us. So we have the tendency of not, or I have had the tendency earlier in my career, and I would say really not that early, even as a senior leader, of not feeling like I belong in that space, because everybody around you looks different. They have a different culture. They've been exposed to different places. They've traveled and done things that you haven't had exposure to. So the conversations, the banter at the executive table really excludes you sometimes because you just don't understand it. And so as a African American in this space, in such a big room, I've had to normalize my culture. I've had to normalize the things that matter to me and that are important to me, and have them be the uncomfortable ones, them be the ones that can't really engage in the conversation because they don't understand. So it's a challenge, and it's a delicate balance to be able to know the spaces to insert those things, but that has certainly been a challenge. Another thing is just the overwork and the overburden that we sometimes put on ourselves, because we feel like in order to compete at the same level as our white counterpart, then we've got to go extra hard. We've got to do more than what is required. And that sort of fosters that imposter syndrome, where you always feel like, I don't really have this, or I'm not really sure. And the reality is nobody does. The bigger those rooms get and the more you're exposed to the executives, you realize they don't really have it together. Okay, we're all figuring this out. And they don't necessarily want you to know that. But the higher you go in organizations, you realize that there's no secret sauce, that everybody figuring it out. And the sooner you can get comfortable with that fact, and that you don't always have to know the answer. I would sometimes leave the office with a pit in my stomach because a question came up in an executive meeting that I couldn't answer. And I'm like, Sonja, you have to know it. You have to know the right answer. And I had to calm myself down and say, girl, no, you don't, because everybody, they don't know the answer. And in fact, when they speak up, half the time it's the wrong answer. So you just need to sit still and speak up when you have something to say. And then we just talked about, but just asking for what you want, and that's not just in a negotiation for when you're starting a position, but when you are transitioning through certain seasons of your career and how things are being managed based on what's happening in the organization, also being comfortable saying, okay, this is what I need now. I need this now. I may not have needed it before, but I'm going to need to take Fridays off for the next 3 weeks. Or I'm going to, whatever it is that you need, being comfortable saying that, because your counterparts are definitely asking, and they're definitely, leaning into those conversations. And it's us that's left to bear the burden. And I think what has been helpful for me when you say, how do you manage those challenges? Definitely finding my community, finding my people, which is why the Power Tribe has been so important, because you don't realize the weight that you're carrying until you get in a room with people who have been experiencing the same things that you are, and having to be able to speak about those shared experiences gives you the language sometimes that you need to, articulate what's happening. Sometimes we know and we can internalize it, but we don't have the words to speak it out about what exactly is happening. So for me, that's been a win. And also through my mentorship with Kenya, she taught me about the personal standards of excellence. And that for me is my go-to. You can probably see part of it on my wall behind me. But whenever I'm having a hard day, I go to my list and I say, okay, this is who you agreed to be. This is who you said you want to be. This is how you want to show up. Now, this is a hard situation, but are you showing up as being courageous, or whatever it is that is on my personal standards of excellence. It's my contract with myself to make sure that I'm not escaping out or I'm not running away from the difficult things, which is the last point that I would make is sometimes you just got to lean in to those difficult conversations and to those difficult spaces with courage. And it's no way to escape it. You've just got to say, what it is that's bothering you. You got to take the position, you got to take the whatever it takes for you to get your point across, even if people misunderstand or don't understand your perspective.
That everything you said could preach, okay? Everything you say can preach. Thank you for sharing that. You said so much that I want to lift up, and I see that we do have a question. That this is a great time to insert the question. But one of the things you talked about, Sonja, is this. I'll summarize it the way that we talk about it in the Power Tribe, which is the narrative, the story we tell ourselves, right? Sometimes we're in these rooms and that sense of belonging, or we start to say that, oh, they must know this, or they must be smarter than me, or they must because they have more experience. And so then we start to create this whole narrative or this whole story in our head. And listen, let me be the first to say, we create the narrative for good reason, right? It's not that it's not for good reason. There's proof around the room because we know the truth is we don't have the same access or experience. But that story that we tell ourselves in those moments, I always say, take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself, is this truth or is this a story that I'm making up? And that for me has always been a way to snap out of it, if you will, or at least to be able to take a step back and regain and go back and look at my own personal standards of excellence and be like, all right, girl, so this is who you say you're going to be. So get to work. So Erica asked the question, and any of you can take it. I'd love to hear from Erica or Brittany. It says, as a woman of color in leadership roles, do you feel like you have to conform to norms of how a professional should conduct herself? That's a whole loaded question.
I'll take it first. So when I think back about earlier on in my career, I don't know that I would say the conforms of how a professional should conduct themselves. What I would say is, I had a lot of pressure on who I thought I should show up as. Because like Sonja mentioned, the one of many or the one of only, like it's in higher ed and academia, you're going to see many white males. So what that view of professionalism, from everything from what my hair should look like to whether I should wear braids, which just all the things, and they just all always circulated in my mind earlier on in my career. And then, as I kind of progressed and just realized that, you're putting in that same level of work. And as Sonja said, they don't know as much as you do many times, or we're all struggling together. So we're trying to figure this thing out together. So you're going to continue to show up as your authentic self. However, not long ago, I didn't know to use my authentic voice, meaning that like I would sit in meetings, and while I had an opinion, if someone else said something, maybe I wouldn't say anything. I'm talking like maybe 5-6 years ago, because I would probably be the only female, one of the youngest, and probably the only person of color. So there you feel like, oh, those points have been made, but I never really stood or felt like I stood a chance to really stand on my own voice. So to answer Erica's question, not now. I feel like I am a professional. I know that I'm a professional, and I show up as that every day. So with that being said, I train my team to do the same thing. So anything that I have to address, there's a way to do it. I've left out of meetings with feeling that pit in my stomach, like, you know what, maybe you should have answered that differently. But, it's that negative self-talk in your mind where you kind of have to cast that down and then go back to who you said you are. So I don't at this point. I don't feel that I have to conform. I do feel that I am a professional. I just act accordingly. Still true to who I am, though.
And a lot of the same of what Erica said, just coming up in the hospitality industry, you know, if depending on the type of property, if it was luxury or boutique, you could only wear your hair a certain way. You couldn't have certain colored nails. You couldn't have certain colored hair. And all of those policies would directly go to, directly impact us, Black women who had the braids and had the kinky curly hair, or, you know, we look beautiful in all shades of color. If it's blonde hair, if it's brown, and they would make me sit down with those people and tell them that their hair was unprofessional. And I would tell them, write me up today, because how do you know, or how do you say that her hair is unprofessional? Because that's the way her hair grows from her head. So, you know, in the beginning of my career, having those conversations or being made to feel like I had to wear my hair a certain way, or I had to speak and use certain words, it was hard. You felt like you had to conform to someone else's definition of professional. But at this point in my career, absolutely not. I know now many ways legally to counteract any of that today. So we're not doing that. As Erica said, I'm now showing up in spaces authentically as myself. I am a professional. I know how to be professional. I know how to take care of my team and take care of my job in a way that is going to breed results for organizations. So there's no conforming. It's just showing up authentically as who I am.
Thank you for that. Two things that I would just add to what has been said to that question specifically. One, this is why when we get into positions of power and influence, like the three of you are in organizations, using our voices is so important. Using our voice to change the narrative and to normalize how we show up as professional is so important. If we get into these rooms, even if you're the few, the only, the new, the first, I've been all those labels too, it's so important that we use our own influence and power, because we each have it. If you're in the room, you have the influence and you have the power more than anybody else that looks like you that's not in the room. And so it becomes incumbent upon us. I hate to say it's our responsibility, because you can do it if you want or not. I'm not going to judge you, but that's how it becomes normalized. That's how that conformity conversation starts to die down, is because we speak up. The other thing that I'll say to that too also is, I certainly want to lift up what Brittany said about knowing, because sometimes we have to know how to fight. And sometimes the confrontation or the fight is to know the law as well, as a way to protect yourself as you are trying to navigate some of these landscapes. And now, to know the law is not a threat, it's protection, because that is what the law is designed to do. And sometimes people will make you feel like you're using it as a threat, but you're not. You're using it. I just need everybody to know that I know too, just like you know. And so I think that is something that we don't talk about enough. And there may be times that you have to protect yourself in that way, and that is okay. That is what the law is there for. And so I just wanted to lift those things up. Thank you for your question, Erica. So the other thing about what we highlight in the Power Tribe, so your power, your presence and being in the room, but the other is your influence. So influence is your ability to get other people to do things, right? That's basically what influence is that your ability to get other people to do things. And so the question that I have is, this is open to any one of you, is how do you use your influence in the workplace and the community to make our community better?
Well, I'm happy to share. I think, being at the helm of this organization, again, gives me a lot of access. And I went to a D&I conference. I believe it wasn't this year, it was the year before. And they were talking about, this has been sort of the trend. Organizations now are talking more about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how to make sure people feel welcomed. And some organizations are being a lot more proactive than others. Some of it is just, saying it out loud. They don't really have any intention to do anything about it. But one thing that I picked up from the conference is that you don't have to have a large budget to be able to impact and make sure that people of color are being bought into organizations, or their expertise is being, if you have a budget, then you have the opportunity to share and to lift up our community. So if you're in a space where, you know, you don't have a budget, or you have a very limited budget, or you've just been given a project that you can manage, then you can still use your influence to support our community by finding Black vendors, finding people of color that do the work that is being asked for in the organization. That's a wonderful way to give entrance into the organization. And I also would say that, like, know who is around you and what they're good at and elevate their voices. So that's a really big thing for me, because I'm already sitting at the table. Most of the people in the organization know my name, know my voice, they know what I'm bringing. But most of the time in those rooms, I'm making sure that I at least give 2 or 3 other names of people, women specifically if I know them, or even men, but specifically of color if I know, to give them access into those spaces and help people to start looking and listening out for them. And I do it very intentionally and strategically, mentioning that name 2 or 3 times on 2 or 3 different occasions until it clicks and checks to give access to other people in equal spaces.
That's so good. That's real good. If you guys are leaders and sitting in spaces and don't do that, that was a very good tip. Anybody else want to answer that question?
I can add just a tidbit. You know, when we're fortunate, one, to be in those spaces. So the first thing that I do is I pan the room to see who's missing, to see whose voice is not represented, because in my position, we are making a lot of decisions on policy. And, you know, we talk about diversity and inclusion, but a lot of times we're missing that E. You know, so we're inviting, and we're doing this huge push to get people of color, marginalized populations to come, marginalized students to come to MUSC. But what are we doing once they're there? How are we supporting them? How are we taking care of them? Because the policies weren't designed. So that's the first question. You know, if I wasn't in the room, then you guys are making decisions on things that directly impact students that look like me, and you're not even asking how it's going to affect them. So that's the first thing that I do professionally. A goal of mine this year was to have more community influence. So through the Power Tribe, I'm working to become a part of a board so that I can get more involved in a community with an organization that kind of aligns with my values. But certainly, you know, as Sonja mentioned, anytime I'm able to lift as I climb, I mean, that's one thing that I pride myself in, is building teams. And so if there's anyone that looks like me that, you know, I can groom and make better, I'm dropping that name. I'm making sure, because a lot of times they say, oh, well, we don't have anyone that's interested, or we don't know anyone that's qualified. Oh, yeah, you do. You know, so that's my whole goal. I've only been at MUSC for almost 3 years and been in higher ed for a long time, but you know, it took me just a snap to get things moving when I got there. So why can't it be done for people that have been there? Like I had my assistant that retired after 20 something years, and she was still really in that position. So I just feel like we have to really build from the ground up and make sure that those that have influence listen and are really engaged with those people that are around us.
I love it. So I'm going to move us forward because we have about 10, 12 minutes. And we cannot end this conversation without talking about the Power Tribe. You guys have like plugged it a couple of times. I plugged it a couple of times. It's the reason that we all know each other. And this collective brilliance is on this conversation tonight. So let's talk a little bit more about the Power Tribe and the value that the Power Tribe brings. And yeah, I could talk about it, but I'd love for you all to share from your own perspectives. So I'm coming back to you, Erica. How would you describe the Power Tribe?
Well, y'all, we can be here for hours. You know? So the Power Tribe, to me, and I'm sure that my sisters are going to echo, but I feel like it's an oasis for our power-filled women. It is a safety net for us where we are encouraged to live out loud, to courageously, authentically live out loud. We do it scared. We are pushed and stretched by our fearless leader beyond, but it's all in love. You know, there are times where we are anxious about certain things that we are about to embark upon. And we have a group of sisters that are just genuinely supportive, that stand in the gap, that hype us up, that say, okay, there's nothing that you can't do. We're transformative, we're innovative, and we're unapologetic in who we say we are and what we're going to do. When I joined the Power Tribe, and when I learned of the Power Tribe, it was just an idea. And when I tell you that Kenya Dunn has brought that idea to fruition plus, so it has blown my mind, from professional to personal, and just kind of taking us out of that bubble that sometimes we get forced into, or that box that people might put us in because you've been doing this for so long. But this is something totally different. This is something like, girl, you don't know that there are people that are going to ask about you that, you don't even know. I'm going to put you on this panel. You're going to talk and you're going to do well, so it's like, let's go. And so we're so crazy enough to believe in that direction, but we wouldn't have it any other way. And so I know that, like I said, my sisters will echo what I said, but if you're missing out on the Power Tribe, you're missing a treat. I call it an oasis of just strength, empowerment, all the things.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you. And so, Sonja, what would you tell women of color about why they should join? Why should they? Because the Power Tribe is a fee-based community, so it is a membership that you pay. So, Sonja, what would you tell women? Why should they join?
I mean, all the things that Erica just stated, but I am probably the biggest cheerleader of the Power Tribe, because I found this, and Kenya and I knew each other before Power Tribe, but we connected around this concept and this idea during a time that was very difficult for me in the transition at work. And so for me, I'd say you should join because you find your people here. Like, it's no doubt about it. When you come here, I've never sensed 1 minute of competition, or, sometimes when you get in certain organizations, when it's a lot of women, it feels kind of catty and argumentative. There is none of that. We are very collaborative. We get to share our thought leadership. And I think that was a big thing for me coming into the Power Tribe, is that just the idea of that and having the language around, I actually do have thought leadership. And we minimize that. I think Brittany said it earlier. We minimize it, but in this space, it's elevated. And you're going to quickly begin to develop, even if you don't have the language or you don't have the words, just being in the company of women who are power-filled and who are certain and confident in themselves, it quickly builds in you the ability to replicate that in your own life. And so it's so, so valuable. And I'd also say that it's a time that we get exposure to a lot of information. When you're in these spaces and you feel isolated and you feel like you don't have the right experience, just having the conversations with women who have had other experiences to you helps you to start to acclimate faster and quicker. And you start to say, oh, okay, if I hear that again, then I know how to respond. Or I write down words that I hear people say, I'm adding that to my vocabulary, and all of these things help you to just feel more natural and to feel more harmonious within your own power dynamic, within the own who you are individually, because you've connected with women who are doing and feeling the same way. And so I urge everyone, in any time that you need, do anything that is going to benefit you long term, you have to invest. And if you don't invest in it, you don't typically necessarily appreciate it. So I think the investment is important to and it's not that expensive, but it is enough for you to know that this is something I'm not going to skip out on. I'm not going to spend my money and not show up to the sessions, because they really do benefit and help us. And all of us have joined organizations. Brittany mentioned it for us at SHRM, but that content is not geared specifically toward us. We can get things from it, but this is built just for us, with us in mind.
Love it. Thank you. And so, Brittany, I'll come to you and ask you this question. So Erica and Sonja talked more about their thoughts, but what value can you share? And you won't hurt my feelings if you say nothing. What value has the Power Tribe brought to you?
Well, for me, I, moved to a new city as a single mom. I didn't have any family. I didn't have any friends. And the Power Tribe became family to me. It was a bunch of women who I just felt like were like me, not in a way of like, who we were and how we acted, but they were searching for clarity in themselves, just like I was. You know, I felt like there was a lot of sessions where we were all soul searching, you know, and setting those goals for the year. And they weren't just professional goals, but they were personal goals. You know, I'm telling Kenya, I just need more me time to put myself first, and because I'm always mom first. And Kenya is texting me saying, here's this event, go to, get your sitter. I'm going to keep texting you, making sure that you get out and accomplish that goal. And it felt really good that I was a part of a group of people who just wasn't serving lip service, that they were like constantly in your corner, constantly backing you up. Even when life gets really busy and I can't attend a meeting or I can't attend something, you know, I'm still getting emails, still getting text messages, people just checking in. How are you doing? How's work going? How's your son? And that brought so much value to me because I no longer felt alone. I felt like I was able to find a new home in a new city with a bunch of sisters that I didn't know that I needed. So it has brought so much value to my life, and I'm just so happy that I found you guys.
Well, we are so happy to have you, and we are really excited about this summer.
Yes, we are.
Well, listen, guys, I just want to say thank you all for those kind words. And I know we are about 5 minutes out. And so I wanted to just take another opportunity to invite any last minute questions from the audience. If there are any questions that you guys have for the ladies tonight. And here's what I'll tell you about the Power Tribe. And so the Power Tribe was really born out of something that I saw, one, in my own career journey. Most of you know that I had a 20-year corporate climb all the way to the top ranks of a large company. But also what I saw as I was trying to help others. And it was really that there was no place that was designed with women of color in mind for women of color to come to be nurtured, to be encouraged, and to be catapulted into their rightful place as leaders and influencers, because I believe that women of color should be in every room where decisions are being made, our money's being paid, and our communities are being affected. And so the Power Tribe isn't just about if you are trying to make the corporate climb, but also if you are an entrepreneur, also if you started your own nonprofit, also if you are a community leader, if leadership and influence is what you are on the journey of doing, then the Power Tribe is for you, because this space is where we get to come and we get to talk about the challenges that we face. And we also chart a course strategically to say what rooms exist in this community that we are not in. And then we make a concerted effort to say, let's get ready to mobilize and let's get in those rooms, because we know that once our voices get in the room, then everyone benefits. When the Black woman in particular is in a room, she thinks about others other than herself. And so we also get very, 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 very focused on, and Erica mentioned it earlier, that we are doing a small group of us who are preparing to get on boards, more boards around the community, because our voices need to be there. If you're talking about our children in education, guess what? We're mothers. Our children need to be heard, and we're going to be there to speak for them. So we do a lot. We have fun too in the Power Tribe. We do support each other and get out and support other women, particularly women of color, whether you're in the Power Tribe or not. If we know of something that you're doing and we can be there to support, we want to be there to support, because we know the Power Tribe timing may not be for you to come and join us immediately. But what we want you to know is that we support all women, particularly all women of color. So thank you, guys. I see one more question. How would you describe yourself to your 5-year-old, to the 5-year-old you once were? That's good. So how would you describe yourself to the 5-year-old you once were? Who want to take a stab at that? We only got time for probably one person.
Well, I'll try.
Try it.
Mika, that's a good one. Oh, Erica, who did it? So
Yep.
I'll just say, remember when you were in the Sunbeam Choir and when you were on stage having to say your Easter speeches and you were mad because your mom and grandma made you go to church and all that good stuff. This is why. because that was my first time being able to just kind of speak and just be expressive and not afraid to use my voice. So that's how I would describe myself. Like, you're doing everything that you did. You started out at 5 years old, you started out in the church, and you just kind of worked your way up, and you're still using your voice to make a difference. And I did it then, and I'm still doing it now.
That was phenomenal. That was so good. That was good. Well, listen, guys, first of all, to the panel, Erica, Sonja, Brittany, thank you so much for stepping out on this ledge and being courageous and really sharing your thought leadership tonight. You will see that these ladies are all on social, so please, by all means, connect with them on social. They are bright. They are brilliant. They are fabulous women that you should know. Thank you to the Low Country Juneteenth week for allowing us this space to really share who we are as Black women, as leaders, to talk about the Power Tribe, and really just to uplift and encourage all of those who were able to be here with us tonight. And thank you to all of you for tuning in, and make sure that you guys stay on the Low Country Juneteenth week page for more conversations and activities as we move towards celebrating who we are and our freedom. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Linda Parker, but you can call me BP. Come on and bring the entire family, and let's celebrate at the Low Country Juneteenth week. It's a whole week worth of activities, and we're going to spend some time together, too. And don't forget about that grand finale that's going on that Sunday, June 19th. On stage that day, Midnight Star, Dave Hollister, Fat Man Scoop, and you've got Shelton Richardson. And of course, the Star 99.7 family, we want to see you there. You can get your tickets by going on to JuneteenthWeekFestival.com. Come on through the Ritz Bar and Grill, 3557 Dorchester Road, and let's get you some tickets to the Low Country Juneteenth